All right, got it. Okay. So welcome everybody. Yay, yay, yay. I'm glad you're here. As I was telling our panelists earlier, I was talking to Kate and I said, Kate, we've been blessed to have an opportunity to do a lot of salons. We've done them on costuming and set design and lighting and directing and choreography and diversity and inclusion and on and on and on. But I realized that we had never really done one around acting. And, and I was like, I know a lot of actors are on the judging panel and go to evaluate the shows. And some are actors and some are not. And so I thought, why not have the opportunity to have actors talk about acting. And then I came up with, I thought, what was a brilliant idea? It was to have people from the same household who are actors talk about their process and how it can differ even within the same household. So I thought it would be a fun thing to do. And then to make it even more fun and challenging, I decided we needed to have a game. We need to have a game to see how well our couples know their spouses' acting habits, process, thoughts. So we're going to start off with that, and then we'll go into questions from the participants, and we'll talk a little bit about our rubrics and how we apply what we learned today to our rubrics. So I'm going to ask Kate, who is our host, to spotlight our couples as I introduce them, and then they will stay spotlit until the game is over. So just because it's in this order on my screen, Kate Braun, would you please spotlight Tess Kincaid and Mark Kincaid?
Yes. Let me see how I can do this. I hover.
They are amongst our
I'm not sure I like being a guinea pig.
they are amongst our acting royalty in town. And then next on my screen would be Rob Cleveland and Mary Lynn Owen. Would you please spotlight them as well? Yay! Next on my screen is Freddie Ashley and Craig Waldron. Would you please? Yay! And last but certainly not least, we have Keith Bolden and Tinashe Kajisi Bolden. Yay! Now, I'm sure everybody can see them. I'm going to ask them to go back to back. I'm going to say, Tess, you're A, Mark, you're B, Rob, you're A, Mary Lynn, you're B, Keith, you're A, Tinashe, you're B, and Ashley, you're A, Craig, you're B. Okay. So would you go back to back so that you can't give each other eye signals? And I have some questions. I'm going to ask the person who is A to answer this first question about B. What type of learner is your spouse? Kinetic, auditory, or visual? You can't look at the screen and give each other hints.
No, you can only pick one.
One.
Do we,
Oh, wait,
write-
I won't say one. I just asked you the question. You answer the way you need to.
do both people write it down, Britt?
No, just, well, actually, it would be good because then I know you're not cheating, but I trust you guys. But you can write it down too, so that we know that. So I'll do it one question at a time because that'll be easiest. Okay, if you will turn to the camera. Keith. Tinashe, are you a kinetic, auditory, or visual learner?
Visual.
And Keith, would you put up what you said?
Put visual and auditorial. But visuals first.
Visual and auditorial. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that point. Mary Lynn, and you are a what type of learner?
All three mostly auditory.
And Rob, you put?
All three. Yeah.
Did you really? Okay.
All three.
Okay. Mark, you are?
Oh, yeah, I think I'm a visual learner.
And Tess? Kinetic.
Kinetic.
Wrong on that one. No point for you. And Craig, you are?
Oh, they're
Sorry.
muted.
Visual.
And
He never
no
listens.
point for you. So right now, folks, I hope you're enjoying this. We have 1-1. I mean, we are tied with Rob Mary Lynn and Keith Tinashe. Our next thing, if you'll turn back to back, B, will you answer this about A?
Oh, good.
When working out of town, your spouse likes to blank. When working out of town, your spouse likes to blank. B, you are answering this for A.
Do we get therapy after this?
Do we have a therapist on our audience?
Therapist on call.
Brenda, that's a pretty vague question.
Oh, it is. I know.
Hmm.
I know. It was really further down on my list after we got to know each other more, but I decided I'd jump.
Yeah. She got it.
Okay. When working out of town, my spouse likes to. All right. And turn. Tess, when you're out of town, what do you like to do? Or you like?
I like to explore the town, but I think he's gonna say I like to shop.
Okay. And you said, did you say shop?
No, I didn't. I said what she likes to do is call and talk to her friends and family.
Again, we're 0.
And Mr. Ashley, you like to what?
In every city I go to, I always visit at least one and usually 2 art museums.
Wow.
And Craig said?
Order room service or nice dinner delivery.
Close second.
Keith, when you're out of town, you like to?
Karaoke.
And Tinashe said?
Karaoke or hang out and see people.
Rob, when you're out of town, you like to?
Okay, mine is so awful. Okay.
No, he has to tell me what he likes first. What do you like, Rob?
He likes to not call home.
You didn't even, okay, yes,
Do I say it? You say it.
yes. My favorite thing to do is not call home.
No, you don't get that point.
Why not?
I'm sorry, I went first.
I don't call home.
I got one more that I think he also does.
Okay, so don't say it yet. Don't say it yet.
No. If I say it, you're just gonna agree. Say what the other thing
I
you
was
think
gonna
of.
say, find the comic book store.
Yeah, I watch TV and I read comic books.
Okay, yeah,
I don't know about
yes,
all
should I
these
give them
points.
that? No, I don't know. Okay, so turn again.
Did you write that down?
Yeah. Right, turn it again. That's horrible, not called home. That is a terrible.
Okay, this is to be asked.
I can just think it's
So
great.
this is, we just did B answering. So A, you write the answer for B. If the role requires nudity, would your spouse accept the role?
Please.
You can't talk. If the role requires nudity, would B accept the role? And turn. We'll start with you, Rob. Would Mary Lynn accept a nudity role?
Yes, and she might get nude even if the role didn't call for nudity.
I'm sorry, I was supposed to ask Mary Lynn first. Is that true, Mary Lynn?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
You
Mark,
consider as
would
nude
you
Amanda
accept-
in Glass Menagerie?
Mark, would you accept a nudity role?
When I was 20, yes. At my advanced age, never.
Craig, would you accept nudity?
Partial, yes. Full,
Which
no.
part?
Hey,
Which
No.
what's partial? Like you take your shirt off?
And
He wrote a
Freddie?
lot, so I don't know what he said, but
Freddie, what did you say?
I wrote no way in hell.
Okay, Tinashe, would you accept a nudity role?
It depends on the role. But I would, yes. But
And-
it depends on the role.
Ooh, look at
Keith,
that
you
face.
said,
Well, I said no, but really depends on project.
whoa. Okay, do we have time for two more?
Yeah, I don't think you've totally destroyed the relationship completely yet.
Okay, turn. Okay, got it, Kate. Okay, what would you say sorry, this is B writing this, right? So what would you say that your spouse would say that you admire most about them as an actor?
Say that again.
So what would Rob say that you admired most about him as an actor? Mark and Tess.
Wait, I'm confused as to who would say what about who.
So what would Mark, what does Mark think that you would say
Oh.
that he admires most about you as an actor?
But you would say you're most admired about me as an actor?
Right. So what do you admire most about I'll make it simple. What do you admire most about your partner as an actor? So Mark, what do you admire most about Tess as an actor? Mary Lynn, what do you admire most about Rob? Tinashe, what do you admire most about Keith? And Craig, what do you admire most about Freddie? I have 15 questions, but we're not going to get to all. Aren't you guys lucky?
Oh, Yes.
And that's a great question, Tony, but our time is up. Okay,
Do we turn around now?
yes.
Ah.
And
Let me see what you wrote.
Freddie, what do you think Craig admires most about you?
I actually act so infrequently anymore. I've been sitting here racking my brain. I would say he admires my discipline when I'm acting.
Okay,
Close, close. I said your commitment
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Give you that.
to the process.
Tinashe, I'm sorry, Keith, what does she admire most about you as an actor?
My risk taking, my fearlessness.
Huh. Well, I said his improvisational skills and quick study.
That's good, but no. Okay.
We're leaving.
And Rob?
What do I think that Mary Lynn admires about my acting? I think that my authenticity and to the character, I think.
I said, I admire Rob's genuineness and truthfulness.
Aw,
I believe that's a match.
I think that is. And Tess, what does Mark admire about you as an actor? It's okay, Tess. It's a game.
No, I feel like such a failure right now. You're all judging me. We're all actors judging each other. I think you would say that I work well with my fellow actors.
Ooh, that's
And Mark says,
Well, I had two, actually. I said her stage presence and her range.
Oh, that's nice. I was wrong.
no point, but really nice. Okay, so if we have time, we will go back and ask because Tony presented a really nice question that people want to ask, but we don't have time. We do have the score. We have Freddie and Craig have one. Tess and Mark have one. Rob and Mary Lynn have 3.
I don't
And
believe that.
Keith and Tinashe have 3. So we have a tie. So we might do a tiebreaker if we have time. Okay.
A tiebreaker for the winner or a tiebreaker for the loser?
Oh, maybe for both. So Kate, you can take them off of spotlighting as we begin to open up for questions. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I thought it would be just a nice icebreaker to get to know some people. There's lots of things that we might want to find out about our actors and the process of acting. And everybody has their own process.
Brenda, would you like to
yes.
walk through with the panel to go ahead and ask Tony's question just of the panel of how do they know? You asked that great question of what kind of learner are you? How do they know what kind of learner their spouse is?
Okay. We'll start with Mary Lynn and Rob. How do you know what kind of learner your spouse is?
Well, because I said all 3 because I watch with Mary Lynn. I've been in the house with her while she's preparing for a role, so I know that she approaches it. I mean, she basically tries to memorize the script before the first day of rehearsal. Sometimes, and then as she's going through the process, it depends on, how she's, what the moving is, what the sound is going to be. So I've just watched her. I've just watched her prepare, and then of course I run lines with her. So that's how I kind of know what kind of learner she is.
Okay. Anybody else want to answer that?
Well, I got it wrong, but the reason I said auditory is because, Craig and I have primarily worked together on musicals, and he's got such a discerning ear, and can learn anything from here. Obviously, he studies the music as well, but I've just so often seen him learn tricky harmonies or tricky time signatures or anything like that just from hearing it, and can come into a rehearsal like almost off book music wise. And so that's why, but I can understand why he would say visual, because he also is a really good reader of music and spends a lot of time with the score in advance.
So I had a problem with the definition of kinetic. Tess was right. I'm absolutely, I learn by doing stuff.
So we get that point back.
Yeah. Because for me, acting is a very visceral thing. I have to get on, it has to be in my body for me to really get it. I mean, I can understand it, but I don't really get it until I'm moving, I'm doing something, I'm there. So,
And I think that comes to, and the reason why I said it, and the reason I was right, was he came from a fencing background, and so he's always been kind of a physical approach to his work. So that was why I identified it that way.
and the other reason she knows is we're 32 years now, so she really, we know each other. Hopefully.
You don't need a test. You don't need it. You're fine. And Tinashe, I mean, we know each other for 23 years. We went to school together. We've worked together several times. Have you directed? Have I directed you? We haven't directed each other yet, but I've been amazed at watching her process and how she has evolved and what it's turned into. So I think I know pretty well just from watching.
So I have a question. One of our rubrics talks about creating believable characters that are fully integrated with stage business and connected to their character objectives, and that is consistent throughout. And I know that some actors say that once I can't find my character until I know what shoes my character is wearing, or what my character's accent is, or whatever. Would any of you like to share what it is that makes you connect to your character? You say, when I do this, this is when I know I have my character.
For me, it's always different. It's always surprising. Sometimes it might be shoes, sometimes it might be a wig, sometimes it might be just a particular bit of block. It just always seems to change with the character, that little surprise of how you suddenly lock into something. It's always surprising.
I want to second that. It's always different. It can be. Sometimes it is. It's the shoe, and sometimes it's a piece of music. Sometimes it's a discovery that the character has. That the character says this word a lot. It changes from role to role, but it always is an aha moment for me. It's always like, oh, there it is, and it's usually one thing or two things, but changes from role to role.
Well, I'll say for me, it's it evolves. It's if you were to ask me when do my lines kind of get set in my brain, that doesn't happen until blocking. I cannot learn, like Mary Lynn can memorize a show before she starts rehearsals. I can't. To me, blocking is when the lines go in. The character starts to form the first day of table read. When I hear when I actually hear the piece, and then it's like a blob of clay, and then it starts to get shaped at the first table read, and then the second table read, and then start getting notes from the director. And by the time we're blocking, that's when the lines are getting set in. The character is growing, but for me, it doesn't really mature. It grows throughout the production. I think when we did Red Speedo, Freddie saw something different from the opening night till he saw it at the close, and he said, wow, that is just kind of like it was still the same play, but I think all four of us had gotten richer in it and we kept understanding each other every night we did it. And, it doesn't happen on every play, but it generally does with me.
I want to let the participants have the opportunity to ask any questions. I have plenty and I can always talk and talk and talk. Are there questions? I know that Kate had offered you to put your questions in the chat.
Yep, we have a new one, Brenda, from our lovely and talented Deidre Moore. Do you coach each other for auditions? And if not, why?
Oh, no.
So things have changed, right? In this kind of new world that we're living in, where auditions are happening more from home. So I will say from mine and Mark's perspective, once we get the role, no, because that's not the spouse's job, in my opinion. That's the director and your process in the rehearsal hall. But for the audition at home, yeah, we do help each other out, and we'll
You won't leave me alone.
each other little tweaks, because you're usually doing auditions on tape these days. So
No.
Just no.
No, just no. No, what my quote from Mary Lynn, if I do an audition, the very straight face, she'll go, "So do you want to get this part?"
Wow. Wow.
So no.
It's not good just for us to do that.
It's better than, are you really gonna do it that
Are
way?
you gonna do it that way? Yeah.
Is that what you're gonna wear? Is that what you're gonna wear? That's a choice. That's a choice. We do, and we've when we moved here, we moved with camera equipment, and the auditions that we started to get almost immediately were all camera. So what we're in now, we've already been evolving into this, and I mean, I got the best reader and the best coach in town right here. So I mean, I think that's why I work so much, because Tinashe tapes me, and we 2, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes we're sitting up here doing auditions and coaching each other. But yeah,
I think you're right. Like we've really evolved, and we've learned a particular metric to apply to these auditions, so that we really, as much as we can, take our relationship out of it and really approach it from a very clinical place. And I think then it becomes the excitement of unlocking this script, which usually we're doing something with a 12-hour, 24-hour turnaround. So it's about racing against the clock and doing the most profound, deep dive work as quickly as possible and being as efficient with it. And I think when you're working with a spouse, for me, it's like, if one of us lands the gig, it's great for the family. So we have even more skin in the game to make the other person to try to remove all the obstacles, and to send in the best tape. I think that in LA, or before, when we first moved here and we're using a taping service, I don't think I trusted the person on the other side of the camera. They just wanted to get done within a 30-minute period.
I didn't even trust them to put it together.
Yeah.
right.
We don't really do that. We're both pretty private about our respective processes, really. I can't think of a time I've ever coached you for an audition or
No,
prepped you.
and I think that we've worked together a lot as a director and actor, and I think that the way that has worked is that we keep it very separate from our private life. When we leave the building, the show and the work stays in the space. So I think over time that's kind of spilled into everything else. I mean, I do have a good friend who I trust that I do work with on auditions, but yeah, we don't.
I think there was another question. I have to
There
find
is,
it.
and you all were already talking a little bit about preparing how do you prepare for auditions? The additional question to that is, how do you research a role?
So we're talking about stage, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So read the play. I mean, I know that that sounds so stupid and so basic, and you all know that, but I think that it's so valuable to know the entire play that you're auditioning for, because there's cues that can inform your character's choices for an audition that are there throughout the play. So I think that that can inform you significantly in the prep, and then making strong choices and also being malleable within the audition room, whether that be across the screen or in the room, to not take it personally when you get an adjustment that's sending you in a completely different direction than what you originally chose. You came in with a strong choice. Now they want to send you in a different way, and it may not even be because they want to see the final result that way. They want to see if you can take that direction. So that would be.
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I just want to second that. I still think the actor's job is to serve the playwright. I mean, that's step one. What is the story the playwright wants to tell, and let's follow that road first.
You know what I teach at Spelman College, and so what I found over the past few years, I have some students on the call now, is that there is an embracing of product over process. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, and there's a process to get to where we are, or even to the end of the play. And that process is you have to read the play. You can't skip past it. You have to know the playwright's name. You have to know the play's name. You have to know your character's name. If you're skipping all those beats, then you're just coming in here and you're just showing me what you think is best. And I made that mistake as a young actor too, my sophomore year in college, where I didn't read the play. And I thought I did a great audition. It was for Curse of the Starving Class. And I thought I booked it. I know I should have had it. And I went in and I said, why didn't I get it? Because I had done all the Black plays. This is the first white play I auditioned for, And they said, she said, Keith, did you read the play? I said, no, I didn't know I had to. She said, you got to read the play. And I learned that at 19 years old. So this product of a process, we have to get back to this balance of going through a process for something.
And it's
I
not,
also find that curiosity is what is going to be riding shotgun through your process, and just asking question after question. Like I have a process where just before I get to table work, I will read a sentence and say, why? Literally just laboriously go through it. It is almost like just you're excavating the text for what are the possibilities, what could possibly happen. And I've not done a play as an actor for several years now. I'm primarily directing, but the process is very similar. I just front load with as much research and understanding of that world and immersing myself in everything I can get my hands on, so that when I get into rehearsal, I can let it go and I can play. Because I think that we can, at least if you're somebody like me, who's a little bit of a type A personality, very much, you don't want to stack yourself up so much that you can't be flexible. And I'll have some actors come in and they're so over prepared that they're full up with their own ideas, and we can't improv with each other. We can't find what the real symphony is in the room because they've decided what their instrument is. And I find that to be, if you can fill up with as much knowledge but still have curiosity, you'll be open to what somebody else has discovered in their process, and see how that ingredient adds to yours.
So you said, because we have several people that act and direct on this panel, and Tess said that she has to be open to take another direction than her choices. So when our members come to evaluate the productions, how do they know if this is an actor's choice and the actor's doing some really wonderful work, or if they are just the puppet of the director? And I say puppet of, but
I think you'll know.
How do we know that?
No, well, I'll just speak for me. I think it would be obvious if you're seeing somebody on stage and yeah, they're saying all the lines and you don't see them stumbling or they seem to be going in the right direction, but you're just kind of looking on stage and going, Chris Kaiser has a term for actors sometimes, it's called the 50-yard stare, where there's really nothing there. And I think if there's not a collaboration between the director and the actor, then you may not know it consciously, but there will be something in the back of your mind that just goes, something's not right. Something doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel connected to anything. I think when I did Doll's House, one of the things that Freddie, because my penchant is for comedy and my penchant is to maybe go for something a little bit bigger than is needed. And Freddie a couple of times just said, you don't need to do that much. And so I could have let my ego go, well, no, I know funny, but I listened. And so I don't, so I think it and inevitably, I don't speak for Freddie because he's here, and I don't think I've been directed, I haven't been directed by anybody else here, but Freddie's instincts, at least for me with comedic stuff, is always better than my first choice. And so by the time we got to Red Speedo, I just trust him. And so I think an actor has to trust the director, and the director has to trust the actor, or you have a mess on stage.
Also, what I just want to, something I want to put a finer point under that Rob just said is about how you feel. So when you are coming to experience a play, you are witnessing the product of collaboration. And so to try to divorce the work of an actor from the director, that's not taken into consideration. It might also have been the beautiful lighting design that has draped their body in this particular moment. And then a sound cue rises up and behind them is exposed this cityscape, and he's talking about loving and or missing home. So it is this visual collaboration, it's an oral collaboration. There are so many things that go into storytelling. And when you see a great performance, you are seeing a vessel who has understood how to facilitate all of those things. They've understood the vision of the director. They've understood how to move in that space that was built around them, to use the costumes to become clothes and not just things. So I love the proposal that we, in many ways, educate our audiences and certainly the people that come to review us, because thinking that these things happen in silo doesn't really understand the artistry of what we do.
And also Tinashe said something too that resonates with me. She says, a good director, you won't see their hand in it. It's seamless. And so that collaborative spirit exists in that way too.
You spoke, Tinashe, you spoke a little bit to some of our rubric points in terms of moving effortlessly, using your costume, understanding how your character moves, technically skilled, and the style of the piece, being able to connect to that and not stick out. I mean, I know that I've been to shows sometimes and I'm like, everybody else seems to be doing something in the 1850s and this person is in 1975. So I just wanted to comment on that because that's one of our rubrics in terms of how do we flow through? Are they moving in the same space and are they moving comfortably, technically? So thank you.
Brenda?
Yes.
We've got a couple more questions.
Okay, please.
Hold on, let me get this back open here. Dan was wondering, have you all, first of all, assuming that you've worked together as artists, collaborated together, have you ever learned something about yourself as a couple from working together?
Oh, Tinashe is going, mm-hmm. But does she want to share what it is?
Well,
Yeah, that's a fair question too.
yeah, we have just such completely different processes. We just approach work very differently. We interrogate our vision and our prep and very, very differently. Our approach is just completely different. But I think because of that, we're able to look at our way of doing things from a different perspective, to consider something else. I think that Keith, if I may, I think that he'd rather have a shorter runway in his work. So he prefers it if he doesn't start learning his lines. And I'll speak mostly for film, but your prep work really happens in the room. I would say your process happens in the room. And I like to have a much longer runway, just so that I can throw more things against the wall. And so his process gives me a lot of anxiety and frustration, quite frankly. And earlier in our relationship, I was very judgmental about it. But now there might be a role, I think it was brought up earlier, it depends on the character. I have found that there are some characters that really, they are so close to my skin. If I do any prep on them, it will be performative. And I need to just let it happen. I need to let myself respond through them. And in other cases, I know that I need to have enough research, in many cases, so that I can have distance. So a show that I did with Freddie years ago, Serial Blackface, it was such a triggering, traumatic role for me that I had to immerse myself in research so that I could have bulk of information and things between us. Because as a mother, I was carrying so much of it. I was pulling from my own life, and it wasn't safe. It just wasn't safe to pull from my own experience to tell that story.
I will say that I think that Mark and I have learned, it's similar to what you were saying, Tinashe. You know, we have different ways of working, and what also can be difficult, especially earlier on in the relationship, is that you don't have those, the way you have with your other fellow actors, you don't have those walls up that are going to keep you from responding in a certain way, right? So you may have that knee-jerk reaction because you have permission to, because this is the love of your life, right? And you can say these things, and you have to recognize that you come at things from different ways, and you've got to be kind and sensitive with one another. I feel like I'm in therapy now, but you know, there's just care that you have to take with one another, especially as fellow actors. And, you know, I will say that when I was doing The Goat at Actors Express years ago, that was a really tough play for me. And there would be nights that I would come home that would just be like this, and it would be hard to let that go. And there was just compassion that needed to be there for one another. So.
Yeah, I do want to say that we love working together. Honestly, one of the things we discovered working together is we love it. It's something we have a great deal of joy doing, and we're actually, if I do say something, we're pretty good opposite each other. The big difference in process, yes, there is. She was saying that whole thing about kinetic, yes. Often there's a situation where I just say, "Come on, baby, let's get up and do it. Let's just do it." She said, "Well, can we talk about it?" No, let's just do it. Let's see what happens.
And I'm like, I want to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about the possibility of working opposite her where we are now, because we haven't done it in 20 years as actors. We were fresh out of school, you know, just learned all this stuff, excited, not married yet. Now we got kids. Ooh, we got to find something.
I think for
It's
us,
been
one of
called
the things
for.
that I learned about our relationship had to do with a lot with how to communicate with each other. Because we haven't acted together in over 20 years, but we've worked often again as director and actor. And I have said things to Craig in rehearsal and have seen his face sort of quickly contort with frustration. And I realized, oh, something I just said did not land on him the way he needed it to land on him. And vice versa. There have been some of those things that have been the other way around. And so it's kind of helped me learn like how we need to communicate with each other which I think we already had sort of a seamless understanding of that in life, and we hadn't always translated that, or at least I hadn't always translated that into work. And that was something that understanding where those overlaps and those divergences are was something that was that I've certainly learned along the way, and we've worked together quite a few times.
Well, we've worked together twice.
Twice, yeah.
Once before we were married,
Mhm.
Statements made after an arrest under the Immorality Act, the longest named play in history, which was a very, could have been a triggering play. It was about an interracial couple during apartheid South Africa, and it's pretty brutal. It is brutal. It starts with the two of us under a bed sheet being caught by a photographer in this very, exposed, frightening kind of way. And we didn't, it's hard to remember how we I don't think we talked about it at home.
No.
I don't think we ran lines at home. I think we did it. I think
I'm just sitting here realizing one of my big regrets is that we haven't worked together. We're not often cast together as partners or husband and wife. I think that was that one time.
No, one time we were partners, and then the second time I was her manservant who dies.
Right.
Damn.
Imitating life, right? Imitating life.
If only.
Yeah. I think I die at your feet.
I think you did. It was in dividing the estate, and I was the old matriarch, and he was the
even older manservant.
Right. And there was a love relationship between them, but it wasn't a romantic or marriage or anything like that.
As far as they knew.
So, we haven't had that.
There was some subtext. But in that show, actually, Tess and Mark were also in the show. It was the show with two couples in it, and it was real. It was interesting. Yeah.
Because there's a shorthand, and I think that's what I hear everybody saying is you have to be careful because you know your spouse so well, and they know everybody's buttons, and we all know, and so I'm very sorry I said that when I said, do you really want this job? I'm very sorry.
Hey, Brenda, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I wondered if you wanted to jump into some of any more, like maybe 2 more rubric questions, and then we've got a couple of fun questions for the very end.
Okay. Actually, I was wondering, Margaret, if you would like to, because the rubric really is your baby. So I was wondering if you would like to address some issues there. If not, I will, but.
Brenda, I'm fine with you talking about it. I didn't know if you wanted to share your screen and show the evaluation statements that we use for acting performances.
Okay, I can do that, I think. Hold on. And yes, because I am technically savvy, not. Okay, share screen. Host has disabled.
Oh, no, you can. Hold on.
Okay.
I think I can do this. Oh, shoot.
So once I do that, that will allow everybody to kind of look at those people who are evaluators and those people who aren't, just to kind of look at what it is. And you might have some questions that come up around those things that you have around those as well.
Because we have a pretty good mix of our attendees tonight between those who are judges and those who aren't. So for those who are not judges, hopefully this will give you some idea of what our judges do in our job. On this one, it says principal performer, but these 5 evaluation statements are for either principal or featured performances. And we've got slightly different ones if a cast is being judged as an ensemble. So our judges give a score, and you can see the range at the top, anywhere from 1 to 10 for each of those 5 statements.
Yikes.
Okay.
For each of the performers in a show.
So created a thorough and believable character, fully integrated with stage business, connected to other characters, and consistent throughout scenes and songs. communicated or successfully disguised their character's objectives, demonstrated an understanding of their character's purpose with the script, and fully engaged with the director's vision. Made strong and imaginative character choices with clear motivations and producing a multi-layered complex character. Moved dance with technical skill, with sensitivity to the setting, style, and pace of the piece, took focus when needed and gave focus when appropriate. Sang, spoke with technical skill, exhibiting diction, phrasing, pitch, articulation, breath control, dialect, timing, and pacing, which all of our panelists do effortlessly. But we wanted to present that in case those that are on as participants want clarity around any of those subjects from our panelists or from anybody else. Or if our panelists have questions about it, that's acceptable too.
You know what's so interesting to me is that there's so much alchemy that goes into this through the collaboration and through your own understanding or sensitivity or devotion, or just your fire to tell the story. And so, you know, sometimes all these boxes can be checked and still there's something there that is necessary that I don't know that we can ever codify, but it's about some kind of fire in the belly, you know, an urgent need to tell a story and to tell this particular story for a real resonant reason. So I don't envy you guys having to check these boxes.
Nope.
And I also want to, so much of what you just said, Mary Lynn, and Tinashe, what you said earlier, there's this inability to kind of articulate the magic that happens. That there's all this collaborative effort, and then there's the beauty of the magic just happening. And sometimes it does, and sometimes no, despite everyone's best efforts, things just don't click. And that's always so disappointing for everybody involved. But when it happens, it's such a beautiful thing. And you guys all know, you know, you've just seen it when it's just like there. And the story, the words, the actors, everything just clicks. And that's something that you can't put on a rubric.
You know, and sometimes it works when it shouldn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, Kenny Raskin and I, 30 years ago, did I'm Not Rappaport, playing 82 80-year-old guys. We had no business doing that play then. But there was something between Kenny and I that clicked, and it worked better than it had any right to. And then so 30 something, 27, almost 30 years later, we do it again. And this time we've both had children, we're married, we've both lost parents, we've both experienced things that we had no idea, you know, and we're both like, we didn't have to use any makeup when we did it the last time. I mean, we had to come in 40 minutes early when we did it at the outfit back in the day to put lines and the gray stuff and pictures from that. We looked ridiculous with that makeup on. And then now you've got us both with dad bods and, you know, gray in the beard with no makeup. And it just clicked from, you know, I think the first day of rehearsals, we just kind of looked at each other and went, oh my God, this is, and you don't often get a chance to revisit something like that, but it was very, very special to both of us. And it was amazing to kind of experience it again. And David DeVries, who had been in it with us, then he directed it, which is, you know, another whole animal, directing, you know, a couple of friends, but we managed to have a really good working relationship, and it was on a very special piece. So yeah, there is magic that happens sometimes that you don't even really appreciate it until after the fact.
Yeah, Tinashe was talking earlier about doing a lot of prep up front and front loading the process with that, and then at some point letting it go. And I think that's when that magic can start to happen. And then to underscore Tessa's point, that fire that you have, or maybe Marilyn was talking about this, that fire that you have, that need, like I am someone, and I don't say this to fish for compliments, and it's not false modesty. I have almost no natural ability as an actor. I just don't. Everything I've ever done as an actor has been the result of training and really, really, really hard work. I don't feel that way about my directing, by the way, just to let y'all know that I am an egomaniac about some things. But where acting is concerned, I don't have a lot of natural ability. But I knew that to tell the story of Charlie and the Whale, for example, I knew how to tell that guy's story. And I knew at the moment I read the play, I had to be inside his skin to tell that story. Like I knew I could have directed a good production of that play, right? But there's sometimes when you come across that character who you just know the person. Now, that was also a very rigorous process that we had, and and Heidi and I worked really well together on that play. But like there is something magic that happens, but I often think or generally think that magic can't happen unless that rigorous process and unless that attention to detail has been minded and attended to.
I just wanted to say, I used to say that it's really hard to teach acting because you can teach or you learn to act because you can learn technique. That's easy. Well, that's not easy, but you can do that. But that spark, that's something unteachable, honestly. It's just something, because you can check off all those boxes in that rubric you just had on, and that could all be right, but it's possible that it doesn't engage the audience because the actor is not, he can't engage the audience. That ability to do that is what separates actors from really good actors.
I also want to throw in that last line of the rubric, because this frustrates the hell out of me. The last line about being heard and articulating and oh, she's bringing it up again. Look at that. Technical skill, diction, phrasing, pitch, articulation. I mean, it gets into some detail here, but I find it very frustrating that when I go to a theater and I can't hear people. And I think that there sometimes we lean into the emotion and the relationships, and we sometimes forget about that part, that there's an audience out there that has to be able to flip and hear you. Mm-hmm. So that's when the technical still comes to play.
Yeah. Well, I had a director once said to me, if the audience didn't hear it, it didn't happen.
That's if it makes you feel any better, that's a frequent comment from our Suzi judges, is that they go to shows and they can't hear it.
Yeah.
It's about text too. It's about text work. It's about understanding what is happening on the page. Anybody can read and say words, but to understand what's happening on a page and to down to the punctuation and to lift that up into the air and communicate with an audience and the people as well you're standing next to, that's you have to be able to read for understanding and speak for understanding. Sometimes that drives me crazy.
Yeah, sure.
Brenda, if I can say one more thing about the rubric, just because this is a wonderful discussion of it, just the judging process. Yes, the judges have to fill out these scorebooks after they see each show during the season, but at the end of the season, we give back to each judge their top 10 in each category, and then judges can pick their top 5 of the season out of that top 10. It's not like you put a score on it today and at the end of the season, you're locked into that score. So that I think is where the magic happens, because there are lots of times that I'll get to the end of the season and go, well, there's my top 5, but man, that number 6 score is the one that is still with me, that still sticks with me 6 months later. And so the rubric is a way for us to make sure that all the shows in the season get their fair consideration, but there's still that, you can't put a score on it, what stuck with you, what really made the most impression on you, that you get to reward at the end of the season. So it's very much the objective and the subjective, and how do you put them all together and eventually come up with your top 5 and then your top 1 for the season.
I kind of love that they have a score on there that just goes meh. I mean, yeah, They were dressed. They said words we understood. They didn't even,
Really on that stage, pal. You were on it.
right.
You were really acting up there. So
I just want to say something too, though, in defense of actors that oftentimes perform in different spaces that are not equally supported vocally. I have performed in spaces that are sonically hostile. And it doesn't matter how clear I speak, how loud I am, my performance is compromised because I'm working in a space that was not built for my instrument. And yet I am working in that space. I put in the amount of work. And I think that as audience members, but especially as reviewers and judges of that, this city it's big enough but small enough for you to have an educated understanding of the differences and the lack of equity in spaces. So
Yes.
if you have actors on the Alliance stage who have the support of a mic and can play an intimate scene with all of those qualities and complexities, but then you put them on the stage at the Southwest Arts Center that is so orally disruptive, that work is compromised. And
Or
I
the
think it's,
God forbid, the Rialto.
yeah, and I
Very, very good point.
I just hope that the judges really take into consideration those sort of nuances that make it inequitable, and consider that when, so then I think the question is, what we were all sort of pointing at is, were you moved? Did you come into that space and leave differently? And how do we interrogate that in a way that, yes, there's a metric, but is there room to say, this might not fit into this qualification? Or I might be seeing a show that is dialect correct, but because this particular character does not articulate, am I now marking against them because I'm not listening to Chekhov?
I hear you, Tanasha, and I absolutely agree with you. And if I can also speak to the theater makers of Atlanta or everywhere, that whenever you're considering building bricks and mortar, please consider the art form that you're putting on that stage as you're developing the acoustics for that space. Do not put a flippin' tin roof on a building that you're trying to do theater in. So consider your actors, consider your artists as you're creating your space.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well,
Hey,
and also, I mean, these questions are, and I don't mean to turn this into a discussion about the rubric, because I think it's actually a pretty good rubric, but the questions are designed by the very nature to parse. But I think while you're parsing, just as actors in our process have to do all of that prep work and that really rigorous thought and think in a great deal of detail and kind of let it go. Go back to Tinashe's point where you moved. What was the experience? Don't let the checklist become an excuse to just see where I can find fault. See see if I can catch somebody doing something that they shouldn't have. Oh, what a good ear I have because I caught them not articulating that word just so. What was the effect of the performance? What was the arc of the performance? What was that commitment? How did they resonate with an audience? Ultimately, that is what we're doing it for. And so I would really encourage judges, while you're doing all that work in that very good rubric, that you also take that step back and think, yeah, what was my experience and how effective was it and how affected was I by the performer?
And now I would like to add, as a board member, Suzi board member, that and a former judge in Los Angeles and here, that it's we're theater makers educating, right? So take it with that. Take it with, this is information I may not have considered. Right? There's no reason to be defensive about it. It's just new information. I hadn't considered that. So I'm glad you all brought that up as a voter, as a member. So thank you for this education.
Okay,
Brenda, I've got an eye on time, and I was just thinking if we could wrap up with these last two fun questions that people
perfect.
had
Go ahead,
said.
shoot them.
And perhaps people can you can choose to answer both or pick one or the other. But these are fun questions. What's the strangest or funniest thing you've ever had to do to help someone, to help your partner with a role or to get a role, and what would be the dream show that the two of you could do together?
Greg and I keep threatening to do Lacage together one of these days. And someday it may happen. I think it would be fun.
I think Mark and I were just saying Lion in Winter. We'd love to do together.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is on my list. Please, God, before I die.
What, anything?
I'm thinking.
So many shows. Years ago was Mountain Top, to a two-hander. There's also what's that? Plenty of Time by Dr. John Shevin Foster. It's kind of a Black take on Same Times Next Year. And yeah, you remember that show?
Yeah, but I don't think I wanted to do that.
Yeah, we want to do it. We want to do it. You okay? You've been talking. You good? Yeah. So,
But
strangest thing.
Every day, the kind of auditions we do. I mean, he's taped me on auditions, and my other characters were talking dogs. So we've done it all.
Yeah.
Sound effects.
Sound effects. Juggling the children is probably
yeah.
the strangest thing to have to do because they're up right now, and you saw I had to leave a couple of times, so we're juggling, and a lot. I love when we get to talk about what we do behind the scenes because people don't consider everything; they just see what you put on Instagram. But this is also a process because guess what happens after this? I got to go back to campus.
I will tell a funny story about this. Mark was not home and I had to record an audition. I think he was working out of town and this was an on-camera audition and it was some, I don't know, tough mafia kind of thing. And the other character was dropping F-bombs left and right. And who did I have around the house? My daughter, who at the time was probably 13 or 14 years old. So we've got this little voice on the other side of the camera going, get your F, blah, 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 blah. And I'm convinced that I would not have gotten hired for that by any stretch of the imagination because they're all going, oh my God, she's abusing her daughter.
Our girls all grown up, but when she was little, I mean, that was one of the hardest things was just juggling children and acting. Barbara grew up backstage. She was in green rooms, she was in the dressing room. When she was little, we were doing a Miracle Worker, and she was literally off stage left watching cartoons while Mommy and Daddy were acting on stage, and that's the challenge.
Life, I remember one night our kids were about 7 or 8 and I went upstairs, their rooms were right across from each other. And I said, okay, lights out in 10. And my daughter said, thank you, 10. So they just get it. Who was I telling somebody who had a kid? Oh, it was when I saw Brandon Durden last weekend. We were talking about his kid, and he's growing up in a 2-actor house. And it just becomes normal. They're normal, but it's not really your normal. So it's kind of like you're pulling it out of your ass every day. That's been the hardest. Yes. Well, your life.
Oh, that. Yeah. Okay. I just.
Oh, this has been so much fun. I want to thank Tess and Mark and Rob and Mary Lynn and Freddie and Craig and Keith and Tinashe for sharing their time, their stories, their insight, their knowledge, having us laugh, having us learn. I appreciate it, and I hope that everybody had as good a time as I had. And I'd like to turn it over to Miss Kate.
Sure thing.
Did we win? Did we win?
Oh, who won?
Oh, well, it was a tie. And I don't think we have time to break that tie.
No, it's a tie, Keith. It's a tie. Okay.
I'll share it with you, my brother. I'll share
Okay.
it. That's fine.
That's okay.
But I do think we had to point out that Tess and Mark did get 1 point back.
Oh, is
That's
that-
true. That's true.
Yeah. So, Freddie and Craig.
Please, I
We
want
don't
to
have to talk about that, Tess.
I want to take just a second and thank all of our members and judges and everyone who has joined us here tonight. Thank you for your time in having these important conversations, learning from these friends of the Suzis, and having important conversations about the rubric and about what we're looking at. I also want, if we could please just have a round of applause for Brenda Porter, who does such an awesome job putting all of these together for us. And a second thank you to all of our panelists tonight. Thank you for joining us and for being so game and just fun. What I don't know if everyone could see, but I could see because I'm trying to run the camera, who's on Spotlight. Some of the questions about how each other learned and guessing that about each other. It was fun to watch. I could see some of your other acting partners, other actors who are on with us nodding their heads to, yes, they are a kinetic learner. There have been it was just a really wonderful evening all around. So thank you. Our next Suzi Salon is a few weeks from now. We're actually going all the way until the end of March. It is going to be March 28th. We have not landed on the topic yet, I don't think. Brenda's excited. So we will land. We would love your feedback. Those of you who participated in the EDI bias awareness training on the 24th, you should have received a survey by email, and you please fill that out for the 24th if you were there. We will also be sending you an email survey for this panel tonight. So your feedback is important to us. We'd like to know what you thought. We'd like to know what we should do more of. This helps us plan the next several salons. So thank you for that. Lastly, if you haven't gone to the new website to check that out, thesuzis.org, please do. And on the website, we have opened up applications again for the new judges applications for the next season. So if you know someone who you think would like to be a judge, if you're not yet a judge and would like to be considered for that, please go to the website and download the form. I think that's it. Other than one more thank you, everyone. Have an excellent night.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.